And to remove the tank, you just take the seat off with the key and do that bolt. So once you've got the tank off, or undone and slightly slid back, top it to one side. There's a vacuum pipe there which opens the diaphragm that lets the fuel come from the tank into the throttle bodies. But you've also got to remove the fuel line, so you just undo that clip, move it down, pull that off. There will be a bit of fuel comes out when you first do this, but don't worry about it. This will not let any fuel through, just the fuel that's in the pipe coming out. Undo that and you can lift the tank off. And remove the oil cooler. There's 2 bolts, one here, one up there, so you just undo them 2 bolts. I've already loosened them, so I've already loosened them. So you just take them 2 bolts out the top there. That just pulls down the flexi cables and you can get the nuts to take the air vents out for the top of the head. Once you've got the oil cooler out the way, you have to remove these 2 scoops under here. I've already got one off. There's a bolt that goes in there, bolts it down into there, and in the top up in here, up in there, there's a little pushy downy peg. So this just goes into a little rubber mount, so you just pull that down once you've undone the bolt down there. So remove the spark plug leads, HT leads, 2 either side. Just pull them up out the way so you can get the cover off. So once you get to this step, what you then have to do is undo these 4 bolts either side, so 8 bolts all together. Take that cover off, then you can check the clearances underneath. So now all the bolts are undone, what we do is we just break the seal around the top of the cover, like so, rubber ham it, and that's it free. Then we can just wriggle it out, lift it over hopefully, and come on. And that is the rocker cover removed, ready to check the valve clearances. So to check the valve clearances between the cam and the top of the shim, the bucket at the top of the valves, you've got to rotate the motor, get the cams to turn, crank to turn, so you get a gap underneath. So to do that, the best way to do it is you can put the spanner in on here, down in there. But it's a bit of a chew on to get the spanner in there and turn it by the cam, and it's not nice turning the motor by the cam. So the best way to do it, take this cover off down here. That gives you a nut on the end of the crank, and you can turn the crank over off that nut then, and then that way you're turning the cams round from the crank, which is a bit more sympathetic I think than trying to rotate them. So take this cover off the end of the crank, which is really straightforward, but I'm making it look hard. And there you go. Now you can turn the crank with that nut there. So when you're checking the valve clearances, the gaps in between, and turning it over the shims, rotate the motor anti-clockwise, like so. If you rotate it the other way, it won't do any damage, but the whining is the starter motor being cranked back the wrong way, so it's better if you rotate it that way, like so. When you're checking the valve clearances, what you need to do is rotate the cams all the way around until you get the cam lobes are sticking out like that, so that the valves are totally off the load. There's no cam touching the top of the shim. Then what you do, you get your feeler gauge. We'll go for something nice and small, just sort of fits in so we can show you. And basically you then drop that feeler gauge into the gap between the cam and the top of the shim. That tells you the gap. And 0.9 doesn't fit on there, so we'll go smaller. So we'll try 0.6. 0.6 of a mil doesn't fit. 0.5. 0.3. 0.2. 0.15. So that's 0.15 fits in there. 0.2 doesn't fit. And that is how you check the valve clearances. So we've measured all the valve clearances, exhaust side clearances, inlet clearances. The inlet should be between 4 thou and 6 thou. The exhaust should be between 6 thou and 8 thou. So we've got quite a few that are out here, so I'm going to have to go to Yamaha, get some shims and change them all. So to remove the shim bucket on the top of the valve has a little groove in the front of it in there. I don't know if you can see that. You need that little groove in the front so you can hook the shim out. Then what you've got to do, you've got to compress the valve and the valve spring. So you wind the crank down and the cam round so it pushes the valve down like so. You get your shim tool, which is that. You slot it in the back of the head in this case because we're working on the inlet side. Screw the little nut down into the threaded holes that you have around the top of the head. Tighten that up and you make sure that's on the shim bucket, not the shim. Give that a little nip. Then what you do is you turn the cam and the crank again, like so. And what happens is the tool keeps the valve in, so there's a big gap under there now. And the easiest way I find to get them out is with your little screwdriver inside. You can hook the shim out, like so, and get a magnet in there. Let me turn this a little bit more. And that is how you get shim out. So that shim on that side is a 275. We need to replace that with a 280. Always put the numbers on the shim face down as well, so that if you ever have to replace them in the future, the cam going round doesn't wear that off. So new replacement shim 280, which will make the gap slightly smaller, which is what we need because the gap for this is too big. So drop that into there, make sure it seats into the shim properly, into the shim bucket properly. Just give it a little push down, because what you find is you get a little bit of oil build up between the shim bucket and the shim when the shim's out. So just give it a little prod down with the screwdriver, and that is the first shim done. Now what we need to do, we'll take the cam back round onto the shim, so the pressure's now off of this, so the cam's now pushing the shim and the valve back down. The pressure's off of this plate, so we can remove the plate like so. Now we'll take the crank and the cams back round, so the cams are now both facing outside, both sides again, and we can recheck that clearance to make sure it's in spec, which is what we're going to do now. So now get your feeler gauge, recheck it, and I can just say get a 0.13 mil feeler gauge in there. It's a bit tight, so I would say ideally it's between a 0.12 and a 0.13, so that is now within spec. And you just do that process now with every single other cam, all at the shim height, so that they're all in spec, and go from there. And now to put it back together, it's the complete reverse of taking it apart. So you put the rocker cover back on, put all the HT leads back in, put the 2 air scoops back in, put the radiator back on, put the 2 bolts back in. That's it, done. Tank back on the top.